Hi, this is Jim Janossy, and this is the fourth in a series of 6 videos on forming an Excel spreadsheet and learning how to do it as an Excel hero. What we're doing right now is working from the spreadsheet we wound up with in video 3. As you recall, we had here companies, their share price, and market capitalization as of March 5th, and we compute the number of shares by dividing the market cap by the share price. So we have these values here. If you're taking a look at the spreadsheet formulas that we talked about in video 3, you could actually print them. There's a one-page PDF that I've provided at the link at which you find this video. I'm working from that right now, and I'm going to use it to add in columns after the quantity of shares. So I'm going to first of all put the cursor into column E, and I will type in what I intend to have there as the column heading. And let me just manually expand this so that I can enter this column heading. And if you're following along with me, you can do this too. Let's just see how the system would fit these columns, and we will probably have a larger value there. In the spreadsheet I showed you as the final product, these actually appear as red and they're bold. And also on that spreadsheet, this whole row appears gray shaded to separate visually the column headings from the other rows. So I can do this and find a shade of gray that isn't going to block much out. Now, before we can actually replicate these formulas, we're going to have to worry about the 2 additional rows that were added for totals at the top. And the reason for that is inserting those rows is going to change the formulas here. And since I'm asking you to work from a sheet that shows the formulas as starting with this line on the 4th row, it's just as well that we put in the 2 extra rows up above. And the way we do that is to highlight the 2nd row, and here at the Home tab, I go to the Insert function and I insert Sheet Rows. Now unfortunately it copies the format from the row above the row being added. I'll have to change that so that I set this back to a white color here and an orange color there. I need to add a 2nd row, Insert Sheet Rows, and now I have that. Now here I really do want this to be the same format as the cell here. So I'm just going to copy the format from that to these cells. And that takes care of that for me. But here, perhaps this would be a good cell to copy the format from this way. Now I just noticed these column headings weren't centered, that % sign being left justified as a tip-off. Let's center those. With these rows having been added in, the formulas will make sense now as they exist in the spreadsheet I showed you in video 3. So I'm going to enter this literal value, $7.85. This column will not have a formula. It will simply have whatever value we indicate is the current value of the stock. But this column needs a formula, equals D4 times E4. And you should understand now what this really means. I'm simply taking the contents of cell D4 here and E4 and multiplying them. So when I position on this cell, I see the formula here, but what the formula produces when it's evaluated is shown here. And we realize that we need the same type of formatting here as we have here. Now this formula that we have here will actually work for every row. Watch what happens if I do a Control-C, reposition the cursor, and a Control-V. What's in here now is a formula that's specific to the 5th row. Excel has copied this for me as I've indicated, but it's adjusted the row number to make it work for this row. So in fact, I could copy this to every one of the rows where I need it. And a Control V will do that for me. Now, it would be nice if I saw something other than 0 here. So I'm just going to, as an expedient, I'm going to copy all of the values for the share price, Control C now, as they existed on March 5th, and I will put them here just as the starting. So we do get something being computed here because we have a value in this column and a value in this column that's being multiplied. What results is the very same values because these prices haven't changed. We'll later on in some what if that we do in the next couple of videos, some what if analysis, we'll change these values. Right now what I do need to do though is to copy this format so that I don't have that orange background applied here. So let's do the formatting here. Let's mark a cell. Let's go to the format cells. It's going to be a currency amount, but we don't need decimal points, and we don't want this symbol to appear. So now this one is properly formatted. I could copy that same format down to all of these. Now in column G, the change column, here I have another formula, but this one's a little more complicated, so I think I'm going to enter it here. Equals B4 minus E4 times minus 1. And of course, as we talked about earlier, what this is doing is computing the decline in value in the case of this row and expressing it as a negative number if this one is lower than this. If this one is higher than this, by the way, this computation is going to produce a negative number, which will be made positive by that. So we'll get a proper representation in either case. Having entered this, the only thing you can do to properly finish this is to press the Enter key. And when you do that, you'll see that, once again, even though this formula is in that cell, the value that's actually the result of evaluating the formula is what appears and is visible. So now I'm going to copy that formula with a Control C and a Control V. I'll put it in there. Now, is this correct? Well, in fact it is. Remember, we put the same value here as we have here. If I wanted to just make sure this worked, let's take a value like this. Let's suppose this 7603 had declined to $70. Now, when I press the Enter key and the spreadsheet is recalculated, this appears. But let's suppose in this case the share price had actually increased, let's say to $60. Watch what happens now. You see the value is positive, as it should be, because this is an increase in the price. All of these zeros are actually correct. They seem a little strange, but they're only strange because these March 5th and the current values haven't changed at all. There's no change to reflect. Let's take a look at the last column now. This is column H. The formula there is equal G4 divided by B4. So G4 is this change divided by the original price, which will give us the percentage. But now this is being expressed once again in a way that we don't really want it to be. We'd like to see this as a percentage. We can do that by formatting that cell and indicating that it's a percentage. And the way this would appear now, with 2 decimal points, is the value indicated here. And let's go with that. And once again, I'm going to do a Control C and then go all the way down and plug that in, Control V, and it's showing 0% change, which is entirely accurate. Now we need to put the formulas and the labels in up here. So in column B, we're going to type total. And in this row, we'll type average. Now these are just labels. They're one of the three things that can go into cells: labels, values, or formulas. And the formulas can include functions as well as arithmetic operations. Let me mark these though and right justify them so that they'll more closely be associated with the values that appear here. Now we're going to be using a formula here that includes one of these functions, the sum function. Sum will sum a contiguous column of cells. And here is a very neat thing we can do. We don't have to type the values in here. We can highlight a cell and we can hold the left mouse button down and mark the entire column that we want added. You'll notice this is almost completely formed. All I need to do is enter the closing parenthesis and press the Enter key. And since I had already formatted that column in this way, it formats properly. Let's do that one more time for the average, because it's going to operate on the very same rows in this column. So I'm going to type average, open parenthesis, and I want to average the same column. So I'm going to click here and go all the way down and just mark the columns on which I want to do the average, close parenthesis, and the Enter key. That was pretty painless, wasn't it? Now, we might also at some point want to sum these values here, but I hadn't done that in the original spreadsheet to see what the total shares outstanding. It's really kind of just a number. That would not have very much meaning in any case. The price now column has no formulas here. Now we need to get a formula here, and that formula will be rather similar to this formula. Let's see if we can just copy this whole cell, Control-C, Control-V. Well, Excel is pretty smart. This was in column C. When we moved it to column F, it adjusted for that. But of course, now we've copied that format again, so I'm going to have to copy the format from a cell that looks like I want this one to look. And now I'm just going to copy the format and put it there to make it appear properly. The same way, I could copy this one to here, but let's enter it just to get some practice doing that. It's equal average, even though this little explanation of how the function works is present, I have to find a way to go behind it and mark the cells in this column that I want to have the average developed for. And here I need to put the closing parenthesis and press the Enter key. And now the formula in here is as I wanted it to be. We have only two columns left. In the change column here, this really is rather similar to this formula, but we have some differences. This is operating on row 4, but columns B and E, but the formula that I want here, if you'll look at the formulas on the video 3, the spreadsheet, the top of the spreadsheet that I give you in a PDF, which you can download and I suggest you print, indicates we really want to deal with row 2 and columns C and F. Let's not try and copy something from this row now. Let's just enter this as equal C2 minus F2, close parenthesis, times minus 1. And why that? Well, what we're trying to do is to subtract the current capitalization from the prior capitalization and express it as a negative number if it's been a decline. Here we want a formula equals C3 minus F3 times minus 1. Why this? Because what we have here, we're trying to subtract this average market cap now from the prior market cap. what you're going to see is that these percentages are identical. The percentage change of the total and the percentage change of the average will come up to the same value in these cells. The formula for doing that is really rather simple. Equal G2 divided by C2. And why that? Well, this is the change. This is the original. If we divide the change by the original, we're going to get a percentage value, the percentage that the change is of the original. So when I do this, now once again I see it expressed simply as a decimal number. I could borrow the format from here. And when I place it here, it now expresses it as a percentage. And finally, the last formula to insert, equal G3 divided by C3. And you see it's going to give us, once I format it the same way, it's going to give us exactly the same value. I just included both to make them complete, although this second one need not really be here. By having done this, we really have completed the entry of all the formulas. We could, if we wanted to, play with this a bit, just a little what if, but we aren't quite finished yet here. In video 5, I'm going to show you how to apply conditional formatting to this. Conditional formatting is that feature that lets these values control the color of the cell. And what we'll be doing in that video is leaving cells that have no change here, that is 0 here, we'll have that appear white as it does now. Any values that are negative, that is less than 0, will appear with a red background, and values that are positive, like this one, will appear with a green background. That's in video 5.